of identity has Mike established for the offense in the year and a half here?
Yeah, I think obviously, when you talk about identity, I think it's really year to year. It's not a year and a half, but I do think obviously this year our identity revolves around being more balanced and having the ability to run or pass. So I think that's probably a big adjustment from last year and maybe even previous years. Just being more balanced, having the ability to run or pass and keep people honest. That's what we're trying to do.
James, with respect to recruiting, how do you divvy up your time this week? How much time is spent touching base with current commits, still building this class, and then maybe looking forward to future classes?
Yeah, so from when we're here in State College, not a whole lot different. We're doing a little bit of recruiting during the day, but mostly it's football. We got the recruiting staff also handling that. The biggest difference, obviously, is we're going to practice today. We'll practice tomorrow, and then most of the staff will go on the road recruiting. The coordinators and the GAs will stay. They'll have a practice on Thursday. Then the coordinators will get out Thursday after practice, and then we'll recruit all day Friday, obviously all day Saturday, and then get back into town ready for somewhat of a normal Sunday. Obviously we got a head start, but that's the biggest difference. But in terms of our week, we're obviously spending most of our time game planning and even trying to get ahead on a few opponents as well.
James, over the last couple of weeks, Curtis Jacobs, Tyler Elson, they've talked about how they'll seek out Jack Ham if they see him around. Just curious, how often do you speak with Jack, or have you spoken with him over the years? And what's the sense of the impact he has being around the program as much as he is?
I know it's sad to say, but a lot of these kids, they don't know, some of the players even that we grew up with. That's a little bit of a shame. But obviously we've spoke a lot about Jack Ham and obviously his history with Penn State, his history in the NFL. So they're aware. But I just wish this generation kind of knew the history a little bit more. It's amazing. We put a quote up, I think you guys know, to start every team meeting. And now I've had to add, this is the quote by this person and who they are. Like, who's Michael Jordan? It's somewhat sad. Because what was happening is we would do the quote, and then I would say, do you guys know who that is? And they'll look at me like they have no idea. And then with Jack, we kind of have a tradition where every Thursday he meets me out here, and I get usually about a half hour of walking in before practice, and then he rapid fires questions at me as we walk around the field. And I was giving him a hard time last week because he did the radio show, and literally all of my material that I had told him he had done, and I didn't know what I was going to talk about the radio show, because everything I told him he went to the radio show and used. But he's been great, as you can imagine. Both Steve Jones and they do a phenomenal job for us just all the time.
You mentioned you wanted to work on ball security this week, so what would go into your assessment of evaluating that by the time you guys get to the next game?
Yeah, if you're really working on ball security now and you haven't been, we work it every single day. Obviously, there was some things that we got to continue to correct and emphasize that showed up in the game. Part of it was young backs first game in a wet game like that. But we work ball security every single day. So after something like that happens, obviously you coach it a little bit harder and you hope the players do a better job with it. But we didn't really change our structure a whole lot.
James, what did you get out of Coziah? Played some significant snaps down by the goal line. What does it mean to have him back as part of that defensive tackle group?
Yeah, obviously he's a guy who's played a lot of football for us. Whenever you're able to get a guy that's had production in major games in the Big Ten and get him back into the rotation, it helps. It creates more competition at that position. It keeps guys healthy. All those types of things. So it's obviously a big boost for our defense and specifically our defensive line.
Going off that, you had mentioned last Tuesday that you were going to circle back with us on Smith Vilbert. Is it an appropriate time to do that now?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking. Smith will not be available this week and will not be available this season.
Thank you. You mentioned you use this time to get ready for some future opponents. So, do you have a checklist of things you do for each opponent on certain days, or what's your game plan for that?
No, I mean, obviously our focus is on our next opponents, but with some of the staff that we have, on our next opponent, but with some of our staff, they're able to get ahead on those things, because what you hope is, we're able during this bye week to, rather than staff meet at 7, staff meet at 8 allowed, because part of the bye week is also, making sure everybody's fresh, not only the players but the coaches as well. But then also that should show up in next week as well, because you should be ahead. So if you can get an hour's sleep in the morning or take your kids to school, all those things, there's benefits of it. And then what we got to take is take all of our data, and then obviously the games that are played this weekend, we got to add that to our data, and then we also have to double check our game plans, based on what we're thinking. Did this week reinforce what we thought, or do we need to tweak some things from there? So, but that's kind of our plan. But yeah, we have a checklist of things, obviously normal downs, red zone, third down, so on and so forth, every single week that we follow.
James, thought we saw Amiel Davis maybe working out with running backs. Is he a recent addition to that room? And if so, what can you tell us about him?
No, he's not a recent addition. I think he's been on the roster. Yeah, I think after we had the tryout, he's been, I think, since week 1. Doing a nice job.
James, you think you're closer to getting that consistency in the kicking game that you're looking for? Because we saw Jake handling kickouts, and Gabe rotating.
Yeah, I think Jake's done it the last 2 games, I think. I could be wrong. Yeah, I think Jake's done it the last 2 games. But yeah, I think, like I said before the season, I'd like to specialize if we could. Jake's a more veteran guy. We know he can do it. But I think if we could specialize, that would help. But we haven't been able to do that as of yet. So we'll continue to probably rotate Jake and Gabe. Gabe is closer in that battle. He's been a little bit more consistent. So we'll see how that continues to play out.
As you know, recruiting is all about relationships. You mentioned in the preseason about how this generation of players, the transfer portal, things could easily change. So how do you really gauge how things are going with recruiting? Obviously, it's not the final day yet when they sign, but at least like this, how do you gauge how recruiting is going? Considering people change their mind.
Yeah, well, one of the things that helps is when you get guys that have already applied and have already paid their acceptance fee. That's helpful. That's pretty telling. I think that's pretty strong information. And then there's also you get a good indication about how guys are communicating, how responsive they are. You get a pretty good idea. The red flags for most of us in whatever industry you're in, they're there. You got to be willing to see them and read them. But I think we got a pretty good idea. We got a pretty strong group. We obviously had some changes in our class, but obviously the other part, to your point, is us being able to look at the transfer portal as some possibilities as well. I don't know if we'll ever be a huge transfer portal thing the way we are currently built, but again, part of that depends on what happens with our roster. I would hope guys stay and battle it out, and the answer isn't always that the grass is greener somewhere else. A lot of times it's where you water it, right? And I think there's a ton of value in that. But from time to time, it's not going to play out that way, and we need to be prepared for it.
James, Drew Shelton and Vega obviously traveled with you. Where are those guys kind of in their development? Are you hoping to redshirt them? And is it a situation where you would feel comfortable playing them if you had to play them?
Yeah, I think for those two, as well as a number of guys, I think if you kind of look at who's played and who hasn't up to this point, we've kind of made up our mind that if they haven't played in 4 games up to this point. We're going to try to be strategic about these last couple games and redshirt them if we can. That doesn't mean that we don't feel like some of these guys could play if we needed them to, and we will. Obviously, if the circumstances change. But at this stage, we've kind of put guys into categories. You're playing, or we're gonna try to be strategic with these last couple games as much as we possibly can, because we just feel like the value at this point is, if we stay healthy, would be to save them for another year.
Obviously, Drew's part of that 4-game category. Moving forward, what do you think he can gain out of a week like this? I mean, you guys kind of self-scout. Is that, you think, maybe where there's value for teaching moments with Mike and him, or how would you kind of assess what Drew's doing so far?
Okay, when you said Drew, I was still thinking Shelton.
Yeah.
I was still thinking Shelton. Could you? Because I was literally thinking about something totally different.
Yeah, not your Shelton. When you look at Drew and the quarterback room, what do you think the benefit is for him when you have a week like this? Everything seemingly would slow down a little bit for him. And how do you think he's progressed so far?
Well, it's like Sean mentioned the other day. It gives them the ability to go back. Okay, let's go back through the first 5 games and break it down. And really take some time doing that. Not only his play when he got in the game, but also Sean's play. What can he learn from Sean? What would he do differently? Go back and really do a whole self-scout study and reinforce the things again, where typically week to week you don't have time to do that. You make the corrections, you're on to the next opponent. So, that was Sean's recommendation for him and really the whole team. He got and spoke to the whole team the other day, and that was kind of his message about everybody having a very specific plan on how they're going to handle the bye week.
Thank you, Coach.
Thanks, guys.